So I'd like to welcome everyone to the April edition of our Teaching with Technology webinar series. I'm Sam Enneman in the Center for Teaching and Learning. Our topic today is final grade preparation in Canvas, and our presenter is Nicole Harris, who is the CTL e-learning applications developer. And I will just turn it over to Nicole. So let's all welcome Nicole.
Thank you, Sam. So today we're going to be talking about submitting grades from Canvas to Banner. And the reason why we're going to discuss this issue is because the process is a little bit different from the process in Moodle. It's also even a little bit different from the process of submitting midterm grades to Banner from Canvas. What we noted during the final grading period last fall is that there were some key differences between the way that Canvas displays grades and the way that Moodle displays grades. And so to address those issues, we've made some modifications to the grade submission form. We've also found some solutions within the Canvas course that can help an instructor to completely avoid those problems. So we're going to discuss what those issues were today, the solutions that you can implement within your course, and also the modifications that we've made to the grade submission form to work around the changes in Canvas. So to start this discussion, I'm going to go straight to a Canvas test course. And I'm going to share my screen so that you can see it. So if you can see my screen, let me know by a thumbs up. All right, great. So this is a test Canvas gradebook. I have purposefully made it very large, so there's about 35 assignments and 125 students in this course. So we'll use that to discuss the issues that we've encountered within the Canvas gradebook. So the first thing that we've noted is that there's an option within Canvas that allows an instructor to treat ungraded assignments as zeros. And the way that you access that setting is here, the cog setting, and then the option here to treat ungraded as zero. Now I'm going to choose that option, but before I do, I'm going to scroll over to the course total so that you can see the grades that the students currently have. So just looking at the first few, the first student has what would probably be considered a B. We've got a C, another B, a C, a couple of Bs. Now, when you choose ungraded as zero, basically what this does is it acts as if all of these ungraded assignments that students have not submitted and have not received a grade for, it acts as if those are zeros. So I'm going to click that, and then we'll see how the grade changes. So now, basically, all of the students who had C's and B's now have F's, and that's because each of the assignments that they haven't received grades for are now being counted as a zero, and that is factored into the grade. Now, the trick is that even though we see F's here, the grade for the student hasn't actually changed. Treat ungraded as 0 is kind of like a what-if calculator. So if you wanted to find out, like a mortgage calculator, if you make extra, you want to enter in extra payments, and you want to see what that does to your mortgage, you can see the effect on a mortgage calculator, but it doesn't change your mortgage, and that's kind of how this works as well. You can see the effect of zeros on the student's grade, but it doesn't actually change the student's grade. Now, that's an issue because some instructors may be using this to change the student's grade, but that's not what's actually happening. So a better way of accomplishing that same objective, if you want a grade to count against a student, if they had never submitted it and you want them to receive a 0 for that assignment, the best thing to do would be to go to the column in the gradebook and choose the option to set a default grade. And you can set the default grade to 0. You want to be careful not to overwrite already entered grades so that any assignments that have dashes will now have zeros, but the assignments that were already graded will remain graded. So I'm going to move this to the side, and as you can see, the column that I'm kind of pointing to here, there are dashes, and I'm going to update those to zeros. So I'm going to set the default grade, and it's working, and 11 scores were updated. So now those students actually have zeros. This is the best way to update this, because now the student's grade, the grade that you see for the student and the grade that the student sees are the same. So that's one issue that we encountered during the finals grading period, this treat ungraded as 0 option. It's best to not use that to try to change students' grades, but instead set the default column to 0, or set the default grade for the column to 0. A second item that we encountered during the grading period, the finals grading period, is the ability to mute assignments. And you can do that for each assignment column. Now, muting assignments is not a bad thing, because the purpose for this option is so that as you're grading a column, as you're grading all of the students' assignments, if you don't mute the assignment, then each grade that you update will trigger an email to that student to let them know that their grade has been updated. You may want this to happen, but if you're going to grade over a period of days, you don't want your students emailing you and asking, when am I going to get my grade? My friend already received his grade. So you can mute the assignment, and that halts all the notifications. And then once you unmute the assignment, after you've entered all your grades, then all of the students will receive an email at the exact same time, letting them know that their grade has been updated. Now, sometimes an instructor will mute an assignment because they don't want that grade to be factored into the final grade. That's not the best way to use this option. If you don't want a grade to be factored in to the final total, then what you can do is just double click on the assignment link in the gradebook, and it will take you to the assignment page itself. You can edit the assignment, and there's an option to not count the assignment toward the final grade. That's what you want to choose. That way, the assignment will not count, and it won't, the grade that you see and the grade that the student sees are exactly the same, which is what you want. So those are the issues that we found with the Canvas Gradebook and the way that some instructors were setting up their gradebook. That had a negative impact on the grades that they were trying to submit to Banner. So now that we've talked about those issues and the best practices for those issues, what I'm going to do is actually show the Canvas to Banner grade submission form itself and discuss the modifications that we've made to the form and also some of the features of that form. So to get to the grade submission form, when it's available, and it will be next Friday, probably around 8 o'clock in the morning, you will see an announcement on the Canvas dashboard, and there will be a link to the form in that announcement. You'll just click on that link. And it looks like now that the certificate must have been updated. Of course. Okay, that's fine. We will get to the form in a different way. Okay, so when you clicked on the link to the form, you will receive a list of all your courses on the grade submission form. So you choose the course that you want to submit grades for. And it can take a few minutes for the page to render. So one tip, when a page is taking a long time, you'll notice that there's a spinning wheel, and that indicates that the page is actually working, but it may take a while to render because of the processes that are happening in the background. So while that is happening, we'll give it a few minutes. Okay, so the first page that you'll come to is an explanation of the form. So you'll notice there's an explanation for the treat ungraded as zero issue that I discussed earlier. And it's basically just letting you know that when you choose that option, that your students don't see the same grades that you see. The next thing on this page is an explanation of the default grading scheme. And this is typically what is used in most courses. A 90 to 100 is an A, the 10-point scale. However, if you would like to have a different grading scheme, you can create your own, and there are links to do that. So a lot of instructors will do that if you want to round your grades. So if you want an 89.5 to count as an A, then you can create your own grading scheme in Canvas, and it will take care of that for you. And if you choose to do your own grading scheme, then that's the scheme that will show up in this space here. So the next item is a question. Does your Canvas gradebook accurately reflect the grades to be submitted to Banner? In some cases, it won't. You may have special calculations that you want to do outside of the Canvas gradebook, because the Canvas gradebook is limited in the options that it has to calculate special circumstances. And that's okay. You can say no, but then you get a notice just letting you know that if you do make changes on this form, those changes are not going to be reflected in the Canvas gradebook. So anything you change here is not going to be changed in your gradebook. So you can click yes to say that you understand that that's what's happening. And again, because this particular course has 125 students, about 35 assignments, it's going to take a while for this form to appear. I timed it, and this one takes about 30 seconds. But again, you can see that it's working because there's a spinning wheel at the top. So
while we're waiting for, oh, it finished. I was going to say, while we were waiting, we'd be happy to take any questions, but now the form has appeared. So back to you, Nicole.
Okay, thanks. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. There will probably be a few more periods of waiting, so we can answer those questions as time goes on. Okay, so just to discuss some of the features of the form. The first thing you'll notice is while there's 125 students in the course, it's only showing the first 10. And that's because the default is to show 10 entries, but you can page through and see the rest of the students. Now, if you would like to see more students on one page than at a time, you can choose a different number. So I'll go up to 100, and you can see that there's 100 students now listed on this page. And then the second page shows the next 25. Now, you can only submit one page at a time, and that is on purpose because we really want the instructors to take the time to eyeball the grades that they're submitting to make sure that they accurately reflect what they want that student to have. Now, if for some reason there's a difference between the grade that is reflected here, which is the grade that is in the course total in the gradebook, and the grade that you want to submit for the student, you do have the option to pick a different grade in the grade to submit column. But again, the grade change that you make here is not going to be reflected in the Canvas gradebook. Now, I'll point out another feature of the form, and that is that you can sort any of these columns. So if you have a large course and you want to submit a chunk of grades at a time, one way you might do that is by sorting the course total. So perhaps you only want to submit all your B's first, and then submit the C's or submit the A's. And that way you can focus on a few grades at a time, make sure that they're correct, and then submit. You can also search. So any item on this screen can be entered into the search box, and the results will be reflected immediately on the screen. So one thing that I'll point out is that this is a combined course. There are 2 different sections that are reflected on this page, and you can submit combined course grades from this form. So however, if you want to only submit one course at a time, you can just search for that course, that one section, and as you can see, only section 1 is now appearing to submit. Okay. So with that said, the last feature that I'll point out on this page is that you can treat ungraded as 0, treat ungraded assignments as 0 on this form. So if you had a lot of assignments and some instructors feel like setting each individual column default to 0 is more time consuming than they would like to, it will take more time than they would like to take. You can choose that option here, and the grades will change just like they did on the Canvas gradebook form. And again, it takes a while to run, but you can see that it's running because of the spinning wheel at the top of the page. So it's recalculating and factoring in any uncompleted assignments as 0s for each student. And so now, just like in the Canvas gradebook, the first few students initially had B's and C's, and now they have F's and D's because they had some uncompleted assignments. And you can change that back. So each time you choose that option, it's recalculating the grade, so it does take about 30 seconds to run. So again, you can check any grade that you want to submit. You do have to click the checkbox, but this button will check all of them at one time, only the ones that are on the page that's displayed. So if you want to submit, say, 75 at a time, you can check that, and then it will check all of those grades, and then you can click Submit. And you're now submitting 75 grades for the 2 sections that are in this combined course. And again, there's another acknowledgement that any changes that you've made to the grade form are not reflected in the Canvas gradebook. So you'll want to click that to confirm that you understand. And then also, you can go back and you can re-enter grades. Say if you realized you wanted to change a grade for a student before midnight of the day that you submit grades, you can go back to this form and you can change a grade. But after midnight, you have to go through the registrar's office to make any changes. So once you confirm, then the grades are submitted, and you can go to my.uncc.edu and print a copy of the grades that you submitted. It's also a very good practice to confirm that the grades have been submitted successfully in Banner by going to my.uncc.edu, and you will also receive an email once those grades are there. There's usually a couple of minutes lag between your submitting grades and the grades appearing in Banner. So I do see a question. Once faculty upload the grades to Banner, can they resubmit? Yes, so we covered that. You can resubmit the grades up until midnight. After that, if you need to make any changes, you'll need to go through the registrar's office.
So are there any other questions that you may have about this process? You can either type them into chat, or if you have a microphone, you can unmute your microphone and just verbally ask the question.
You'll notice, going back to the form, that the grades that have been submitted, now they have a status of pending and check email for details. So you will receive an email once those grades have been successfully submitted to Banner. This status message will also change to success when the grades have been submitted, and you can refresh the page to see that update. There's also a record of the grades that were previously submitted, so if you need to change a grade in the future, you can see the difference between what you submitted in the past and what you're submitting currently. So this tool itself does not run a report after the upload is completed, other than this, this column that shows the previously submitted grades. However, you can go to my.uncc.edu and print a report there of the grades that were submitted. That was one of the questions in the chat box. So it looks like we're at 1 o'clock. There's an additional feature to this form if you have chosen to mute any assignments, and I can display that, and if anyone needs to leave, that is fine, but I'll go ahead and show muting an assignment. There are reasons that a faculty member may choose to keep an assignment muted, although that's not the recommended best practice. So I'll mute a couple of assignments here. And go back to the form. And back to the course list. And the process starts over again. So this time we'll say yes, the grades were accurately reflecting what's in the gradebook. But you'll see that now the assignments that are muted in the gradebook are now shown here as being muted on the form. And you have two options. You can choose to unmute the assignments, or you can choose to keep them muted. The caveat here, though, is that if you choose to keep them muted, the grade that is going to be reflected on the form is the current grade that the student has. Any ungraded assignments will not be factored into their grade. So that you don't have the option to treat ungraded assignments as 0 if you keep your assignments muted. And the reason for that is the grade calculation will not be correct. So I'm going to choose that option first so you can see what I mean. And again, 30 seconds seems like an eternity in today's world when it comes to updating a page, but it does literally take about 30 seconds for the page to update. Okay, so before there is an option here to treat ungraded assignments as 0. That option is now gone, and there's a message instead. And you can see that the assignments that were muted are now affecting the grade that is changed, the grade that is displayed here. So those muted assignments are not being factored into the student's grade, so their grade is different. You do have the option to go back and unmute the assignments if that's what you would like to do. Now, if you choose this option, it actually does unmute the assignments in Canvas, so you don't have to go back to the gradebook to do that. And you'll get a notice when the assignments have been unmuted, and you can continue to the grade form. And while that is running, I'll just show that the assignments, when I refresh the page, no longer have the muted indication. Okay, and so now that the assignments have been unmuted, we have the treat ungraded as 0 option. The grades have changed again. Okay, and at this point, you can submit grades the way that you did before. So those are the features of the grade submission form. Again, if there's any questions, I don't see any in the chat, but I'd be happy to entertain any.
So can we go ahead and stop the application sharing?
Sure.
Okay.
The stop sharing button moved on me.
Okay, I got it. So if there are any questions, we'll be happy to take them. If not, I would like, before we leave, I would like to just offer everyone a virtual dessert since we're here at lunchtime. And if you'd like to tell us which is your favorite preferred dessert, please do. And I would just like to thank Nicole for a great presentation. Oops, and we can give her some applause there. And thank you all for attending. And we will be posting the recording next week on the website, and we will send you the link. So thanks, everybody, for attending.